One, two, three, four.
Hello, you're listening to the SKYLIT Books podcast series. We are a general interest independent bookstore located in the Los Feliz neighborhood of Los Angeles, California. This year, because of the coronavirus pandemic, we've had to close our store and cancel in-person events. But SKYLIT is your neighborhood bookstore, and we are finding ways to create community even while we're far apart. In the coming weeks, we'll be putting out lots of new audio content to help you discover new books, connect with authors, and check in with your favorite booksellers. To learn more about how you can help keep SKYLIT alive, please visit our website at skylitbooks.com or check out our social media accounts on Twitter and Instagram. You can subscribe to the podcast on Podbean, iTunes, and Spotify. Thank you for listening and enjoy.
Hello, lovely listeners. Welcome back to SKYLIT, the SKYLIT Books podcast series, where we bring you authors from all over into the comfort of your bedroom, your car, your headphones, wherever you are. We're bringing literature to you. Today we have a fantastic conversation with Arthur Nersesian and Johnny Temple. I'm going to give them their full introductions in just a second, but I just wanted to thank you all for listening. And again, you probably know who I am if you're listening to this podcast, but I'm Maddie Gobo, the events manager here at SKYLIT Books. I just wanted to give a quick shout out to all of our events happening over on Crowdcast. If you haven't checked those out yet, please navigate over to crowdcast.io/skylitbooks. We've got a fantastic schedule coming up for the rest of July and August. Lots of good stuff there. You can also watch any of our past events there as replays. So you can watch the whole video and see the chat and feel like you were there even if you weren't. So we hope you check that out. All right. Without further ado, I'm going to introduce today's guests. Arthur Nersesian is the author of 14 books, including the cult classic national bestseller, The Fuck Up, more than 100,000 copies sold, Suicide Casanova, Manhattan Lover Boy, East Village Tetralogy, and Mesopotamia. He is a native New Yorker who runs a writing workshop in the East Village and can be reached on Facebook. His newest book is The 5 Books of Robert Moses. Johnny Temple is a publisher and editor-in-chief of Akashic Books, an award-winning Brooklyn-based independent company dedicated to publishing urban literary fiction and political nonfiction. He won the 2013 Ellery Queen Award and is the editor of the anthology USA Noir, which was selected as a New York Times Editor's Choice. Temple is the chair of the Brooklyn Book Festival Literary Council, which organizes the annual Brooklyn Book Festival. He also plays bass guitar in the bands Girls Against Boys, Soulside, and Fake Names, which have toured extensively across the globe and released numerous albums on independent and major record companies. He has contributed articles and political essays to various publications, including The Nation, Publishers Weekly, Alternet, Poets and Writers, and Book Forum. Arthur and Johnny, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Big thanks to you, Maddie, and to everyone at SKYLIT Books in LA, which is one of the country's truly great independent bookstores. And for all you listeners, please support SKYLIT by buying books from them right now.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, we hope you might buy a copy of Arthur Nersesian's brand new book, but really what it is you should buy any book that you are drawn to and support. It's a great time to be supporting independent bookstores, which in turn supports indie publishers and independent authors. I'm honored today to be interviewing Arthur Nersesian and talking to him about his brand new novel, The 5 Books of Robert Moses. Greetings, Arthur. How are you doing today?
I'm okay. I'm okay. Still test negative.
Glad to hear that. When you started writing this book, which for viewers out there, this book is 1,500 pages long. It's the longest book Akashic has ever published. Arthur, when you started writing it more than 25 years ago, what was your original intention?
Well, you know, I really wanted to try to capture a society in crisis. I mean, I wanted to, well, that was pretty much it. I felt like we were heading where we are now. you know, and so I wanted to just, I mean, there were a lot of, you know, other themes and aspects to the book, but on the whole, I wanted to try to capture a picture of a society that was kind of going through a tremendous amount of conflict in terms of division and its relationship specifically to government, and really the distancing of government from the people, you know, kind of moving away into this kind of large entity without making it Big Brother Orwell, but really more of what it is today, you know, which is, I mean, anyway, that was the general idea of it. I didn't think it was going to turn into this, I have to say. So,
and for anyone who has not yet read this book, I think, because I've been editing it along while Arthur's been writing it for many years, and when Trump became president, the book seems somehow prescient in a way, because the book explores sort of lawlessness and political tyranny. But something, Arthur, that I think you could have never predicted and known is that your novel, which is filled with viruses and social distancing and quarantining, it's completely bizarre that after working on this book for 25 years, that the pub date should happen to fall in the middle of this quarantined world that we're living in, which is absolutely bizarre, because there's so much quarantining in the book. And there's no way, obviously, you could have known that when you were, you know, 10, 15, 20 years ago as you wrote it.
oh yeah, I mean, there's when people go from, I don't want to give too much away, but it focuses on the specific isolated city. And as the pandemic there increases, people are forced to have, they take your temperature when you enter the different boroughs, and there is social distancing, and there's actually the city parks are used as quarantine centers for the sick. And if I saw any of that coming, I don't think I would have had the guts to write about it, just because you know, it's just uncanny. But yes, it was very unusual.
Yeah, and though I should also tell readers out there that this book is about a whole lot more than those aspects. It's as Arthur says, it's uncanny, but it's not a book strictly about viruses and social quarantining. It's a speculative fiction novel set in mostly between 1970 and 1980, looking at an alternate history of New York City when the city has to be evacuated after a dirty bomb goes off. And a lot of people are relocated to a temporary refugee center out in the Nevada desert. And the temporary refugee center sort of becomes a prison over time.
Also, if I could just add, I mean, the story really is told through the eyes of probably about a half a dozen or so, I mean, half a dozen key figures who become pivotal in the kind of reshaping of historical events. And I really try to go from both the personality of the people and to the historical effects that kind of reverberate in them, you know. So in any case, and it goes back to New York City. The story, you know, relates to before the crisis, you know, then throughout the crisis and afterwards. So anyway, it's a pretty broad scope. Yeah.
There are a lot of real life historical figures in your novel, though they are fictionalized and you take liberties.
Yeah.
Now, the book also has multiple protagonists, one of whom is Paul Moses, who was the brother of the legendary city planner Robert Moses, one of the architects of New York City as we know it today. What drew you to Paul Moses as a protagonist?
Well, I'll tell you, it was interesting because he had several components that I know this sounds awful, but from the point of view of a novelist, there's a lot of problem solving. You know, you try to create a situation, you try to put something in motion, a crisis, if you will, and you try to have a plausible, grounded way of doing it, so it's credible. Robert Moses and his brother Paul, and book 2 pretty thoroughly goes into that. Much of it was taken from the biography of Robert Moses by Robert Caro, and I just found like these two, this kind of hammer and anvil personality that fit together were just so perfectly what I was looking for. You know, they really, they were both brilliant in their own ways. They were both big personalities, and they both ran through the history of New York in many ways. And I mean, I should include or expand by saying that a lot of the characters in the city, in my novel, that were actual historical characters, I tried to basically work up a basic criteria for what I was looking for. I wanted interesting characters who were kind of minor celebrities in their day, who were still kind of influencers ultimately, who actually lived, who are no longer with us and usually died prematurely for various reasons. Not always, but usually. And I really tried to realistically sort out what they would do in this situation if they were in this situation. I mean, I felt this sense of duty to try to honor them, not reshape them. Though I've taken some liberties with certain characters we won't go into here, but in any case, I just wanted to give a little background on the historical characters. Yeah.
So some of those historical characters are important cultural figures like Allen Ginsberg and Timothy Leary and the Andy Warhol superstars.
Yeah.
What are you getting at in terms of having all these really important cultural figures being shipped out to the Nevada desert along with other residents of New York City? But why was it important to include these cultural figures?
Well, that's actually a really good question. I mean, what I had in my day that I don't feel a lot of is that prevalent today. What was really vital in shaping my own thoughts and politics and aesthetic was this kind of counterculture. It was kind of a citizen celebrity where these people, they really were pretty broke. They didn't have that much money, at least while they were working, but they still were able to get this grassroots, notoriety and following, and it bypassed a lot of the corporate imaging and branding that we see today. That really has made our society so much more pliable for people like who to mold masses, the masses so easily into and using them, and it allowed for much more individual thought and divergent thought and opportunities. It made this into much more of a just a plural society, many more voices. And I feel like that's so much of that is gone, and I think we're seeing the effects of that politically today. I think that's one of the reasons that corporations really dominate, and we live under their umbrella. Is that loss.
Staying on the theme of artists, for viewers out there, the book includes dozens of really fantastic illustrations done by an artist based in New York named Uli Sarkisian. And without going into it too much in depth, because listeners, did I say viewers before? Listeners.
Same thing.
Listeners can't see the illustrations, so let's not talk too much about them. But what made you want to include illustrations in the book?
Well, I have to say two or three things. The first is that, number one, I felt like it added to the kind of general do-it-yourself tone of the book. Like, you don't see any chapter art in most corporate novels, for instance, and most major publicly owned novels. They don't have time for that. So I wanted that aesthetic to the book, number one. Number two, I always liked that. I remember reading the USA trilogy by John Dos Passos, and he had like a million illustrations. And even though some of them were kind of fuzzy and they weren't the best, but they gave a kind of, they felt like they were kind of opening the window of the book and letting you kind of peek at some of what was going on. And that's what I wanted. That was one of the things I wanted, that you could open the book and kind of, the picture tells 1,000 stories. You could kind of get an idea of where the book is going or what the book's about. And, hopefully it might motivate you to kind of go forward on it. So,
Great. Can you talk a little bit about the physical landscape of Rescue City, which for the listeners out there, which is the makeshift city in the Nevada desert where the residents, the poor and working class residents of New York City, are shipped out to after a dirty bomb goes off in the city in 1969, 1970. And this makeshift city is sort of a bastard cousin of the real New York City because it's still divided into 5 boroughs. So talk a little bit about the physical landscape of Rescue City.
Well, let me begin by saying that I'm embarrassed to say, but I forgot the name of the essayist who kind of inspired the idea. He's a famous, anyway, it was a famous essay in which he describes this, what he referred to as a military situation city. And I thought, oh, that's great. The fact that the government created these, like, they weren't on this scale, but they still were cities. And I thought, the idea of taking one of these and kind of retrofitting it into a, low rent, quickly cobbled together New York City, and it doesn't quite fit. It was done way too quickly, and it's like a really bad theme park or something. But yeah, it loosely is retrofitted into kind of a low rent New York City with a lot of things coming up short. And let's see, what else can I add to that?
Can you say a few words about the political leanings of the various boroughs in Rescue City, Nevada?
Sure. Well, it basically carries, and again, this is kind of a pretty good statement on America today. It basically carries 3 groups. One group, which is a gang called, I think it's called the All Are Created Equalers or something like that. It's which is reduced to crappers, which wait, is that the All Are Created Equalers? It's amazing when you forget your own book. There's another group called the We the Peoplers, which become the Piggers. So there's the Piggers and the Crappers, and then there's the third group, which is kind of the leftmost group, which is the Verdant League. Is that right?
Yep.
As soon as I finish a book, I try to completely forget it. So I think I've succeeded there. So anyway, those 3 groups, and I don't want to go too much into. They're kind of street gangs, and yet they run the place and they control the people. Much like our 2-party system today, as far as I'm concerned. And that's the I guess Manhattan and Brooklyn are the crapper boroughs, and Bronx and Queens are the pigger boroughs, and Staten Island is the anarchist left.
Ruled by the great Staten Island is ruled. The borough president there is the Adolphus Rafiq.
Adolphus Rafiq, right?
Who's one of my favorite. He's one of my favorite characters in the book. But I wanted to ask you, Arthur, do you have a favorite character in the book, or do you have a character who you personally relate to the most?
Well, I mean, it's interesting because there's characters that I'm attracted to. There's characters who I relate to. There's characters who I kind of feel bad for. I mean, you really do live with these people for years. I mean, it's hard to describe what it's like for so many years, and you find yourself reshaping the characters somewhat, but there's a point where they, much like a child, they kind of develop their own personality, and you have to respect that. And, there are times when they kind of redeem themselves, and times where you kind of nod your head and just like, oh my God. I kind of love B, the Beatrice character, and I kind of like Karen. I don't want to. It's not fair to kind of put it this way. Uli, I've had mixed feelings for, but I respect. And same with like Paul. I mean, Paul kind of breaks my heart. I feel like I'm becoming kind of Paul Moses in my own life, and I want to be more like. I'd rather be. I don't know, Shub or Mallory. I'd rather be more successful, but I mean, we are someone else's characters in this world, so there it is.
Indeed. So what are some of the differences between writing a 1,500-page novel versus writing a 300-page novel, beyond the obvious element that it takes a lot more time?
I was going to say, basically 1,200 pages. Let's see. Well, you know that to me, in many ways, and this is what I tried to convey, that this is 5 books. It really, because even though, yes, there's a totality and they all connect and they all lead to, go from A to Z. And it was one of the more difficult parts was was laying out the architecture and design for how these would all fit together and come to a tight ending. So there was really kind of a double plotting that occurred. I would be plotting the books as well as the overall arcs of where the books would begin and end. So, but I mean, with that said, I have to say there were times when I tried to consolidate, think about how I could do it shorter, and there was actually a point where I thought, I could actually add a 6th book, but I was all out of boroughs of New York. There's only 5 boroughs in New York City, so unless they make Governor's Island a borough or something. But I actually, it's sometimes the difficult part of writing is ending it, and anyway, yeah.
And I will say, and this is not a spoiler alert, but that the ending is phenomenal, and that for readers who have the stamina to read a 1,500-page novel, and I hope there's a lot of you out there, the final book and the very final end, the conclusion is there's some amazing twists to it.
If I could stop you for just a second, I got a phone call from a certain ex who just spoke to a friend of hers who finished the book, and he said that he found that he felt devastated by the end, which I don't really understand that. But anyway, so she was asking me, like, how does it end? And I was like, well, first of all, I'm not going to tell you. You got to read it yourself. But secondly, I mean, I don't know if devastating is the word I would use. But in any case, it was kind of funny to hear that, because there's always been a gap between I think how the author perceives his own work or her own work and how the reader does. So
yeah.
Anyway,
I will say for potential readers out there that there are some devastating elements to the ending, but the ending is a lot more than simply devastating. And it's not a pure wall of darkness or anything like that.
I think I revestate or something like that. I don't know. I don't real estate, but I don't know if I devastate, but okay.
All right. I have one final question for you, Arthur, which is that the title of the book, The 5 Books of Moses, obviously has a biblical allusion here, and each of the 5 sections of the book starts with quotes from different books within the Bible.
Yeah.
You've never struck me as a particularly religious person, so talk a little bit about the role that why you're making these biblical allusions.
Well, I mean, first of all, the guy's name was Moses. But also, I mean, it's interesting because I did, a lot of the 5 books of Moses or the Torah, or kind of deal with the people who are beleaguered and enslaved, enthralled. They deal. Certainly by the end, by the Exodus, the leaving, going to Zion. A lot of that kind of comes. There's that core story, I think, is fairly analogous in this book. And I feel like that's kind of what, in many ways, culturally has happened to New York City. But I don't want to sound like an old fart. It's just there was this interesting, fascinating culture that has been kind of not, I don't know, not exiled, but it's not there anymore. I don't know, there's certainly a diaspora that occurred. And I wanted to, I guess there was some analogy in that. Does that help? Also, I'm a fundamentalist Christian. No, just kidding. Anyway.
Yeah, no, that's a great answer. So that wraps up my questions for you today, Arthur.
Great.
Maddie, you want to take back over?
Yes. Wow, what a fascinating conversation. This book sounds wild. I want to check it out right now. Thank you guys both for being here, and Johnny, thank you so much for your questions, and Arthur, thank you for taking the time to introduce our readers to your book today.
Thank you very much.
All right, so we're going to say goodbye. The book today is The 5 Books of parentheses Robert Moses by Arthur Nersesian. Our guests today were Arthur Nersesian and Johnny Temple. Stay tuned for upcoming episodes, and thank you all so much for listening. This has been SKYLIT.
Thank you for listening to the SKYLIT Books podcast series. Please don't forget to visit our website at skylitebooks.com and make sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Also, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast for more author talks and bookseller conversations. You can find us on Podbean, iTunes, and Spotify. Stay safe and healthy, and we hope to see you back in our store soon.
I see